word is we'll bring up draft here for game number 1. Remember, we're running at a delay on the English broadcast. We will try and catch up to live ASAP over in Suzhou, but game 1 will be being played out in full. Now, we've got to start here with the picks and bans, Jamada. We talked about discipline here. We can see that, the discipline is pacing here for Scout on the kassadin in this first game and making sure they get to, I guess, that late game level 16 win condition.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that. And you've got 2 strong side lanes with the Varus and Leona lane, plus that Renekton lane up top with the Sejuani. So it definitely just says, you know, wait for Scout to hit 16, and we've got strong lanes to sort of provide us with a bridge. On the opposite side, a lot of aggressive laning from the likes of the Ksante and definitely the Jayce into that kassadin lane. You'd expect to see Raram have a fair amount of priority, I feel like, in the early stages, honestly, across all 3 lane matchups. It's just going to be about how Tarzan tries to activate his laners, because he's got a lot of setup and a lot of synergy working off of so many melees and so much CC.
And if you're coming into this split wondering how RA started 2-1, remember, Leyan, Cube were big core carries, but even Strive has been, ironically enough, been striding through the league a bit as well. So as we get into Summoners Rift for game number 1, just a reminder, Jamada told you that these 3 lanes are going to be pretty well off, especially the solo lanes there for RA. We'll have to see if they can take down the undefeated LNG as we walk into Summoners Rift over in LNG's home arena as we hear the Jayce.
I will say it every time, it never gets old. Hearing the Jayce. Of course, we spent so much time without the crowds, so having them back now for this year feels amazing. But yeah,
I have to say as well, Jamada, just cut in quickly. You know, the LNG home crowd advantage cannot be understated. This team has kind of always performed better on home turf for the past year or so. And I feel like with their arena over in Suzhou, it's so beautiful. The crowd comes out in force. So it's natural that, you know, that advantage is going to kick into gear. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the comp again, going into this. You were mentioning there before is lane starts out pretty negatively for Scout. That LNG should have a hard time here, and you put it up to Tarzan and what he can do to mitigate that back.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a lot's going to be on Tarzan here to try and sort of give specifically Zika and Scout a little bit of, you know, room to breathe. I feel like on the bottom side, when you have Varus in lane, you're always going to have a fairly positive time. It's going to be more about how Southwind tries to abuse the range versus melee matchup. So I think really for LNG, it is kind of just about definitely surviving the mid lane matchup. You saw their Strive had a super positive level 1 trade. And on those side lanes, I think really Tarzan is going to have to try and just set up for up and Hong, and of course his Renekton lane, just to ensure that the likes of Cube and of course Southwind and Sssum don't really run over those lanes just because of the nature of the matchups.
And again, mentioned bot a little bit there as well. We saw aggressive trading coming through from Sssum and Southwind. Hung even taking the Boomerang Blade as level 2's hit first, a priority gain, while Leyan is actually invading towards the bot side. This is going to be a bottom vertical side start, while Tarzan sniffing out the blue side on the enemy part of the map, excuse me. Spots out a ward, blue buff's there too, and we are just vertical jungling for what feels like the first time in this patch, in this league. Like, we just rarely see this anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen too often now. What you really want to keep our eyes on now is how Cube's health bar stays, because if he stays at around this kind of 50% HP threshold, he's definitely in the realms of being dove. And you can already see he dropped that ward in the tri-brush. He's eating up a pot. He's got biscuits going, but also on the opposite side, Leyan is also looking for this dive as this gets crashed in by Sssum, by Southwind. So dive's likely to happen on both sides, but it's going to be RA that strike first.
Well, here we go. Leyan close to full HP. Sends out the sapling. LP flashes immediately. Heals come through. Leyan twisted advances. Great boomerang. The bramble smash as well. Ignite. And a cool guy exit as he's ticking, but he won't go boom.
Yeah, just about walks it out there. Gets a little bit of healing on the way out. That's a really cleanly executed dive. And on the opposite end, Tarzan doesn't look like there was any kind of angle to set up for Cube on this wave crash. I assume that Zika managed to crash it in. So RA just up trade there. Up is going to miss a whole bunch of CS.
Hung goes in, has to flash. Oh my god. That Zeta's blade was a road too far. And we'll look at the replay again because top dive doesn't go through. But bottom Jamada, this was cleanly done with an exit.
Yeah, cleanly done. At first, it almost looked like it was going to be a botched one, but as soon as you see Leon go in, it's as clean as it really gets. Once the flash is gone, just twisted advance and the setup is there. The damage comes through. There's not really too much counterplay for Up when he's running the heal. Not really too much of a reason to be running cleanse besides the Maokai anyway, so feels bad to miss out on all of that CS, but a cleanly executed dive from RA means that now they've got that bottom lane advantage that we were hoping we could see LNG potentially stave off, but that vertical jungle means that that's kind of the trade-off, and Tarzan wasn't able to attack Cube in the top side on that first rotation. It's like he's toying with the idea now.
I wonder. I mean, again, that ward's not going to be there. Cube is low on mana. Zeka getting a good trade here, but he's just run out of fury and he's taken a turret shot himself, so this could be a little bit sketchier than first thought. Cube now going for the wave, has the next part of Q, and Tarzan just says no. Too risky, backs away, and LNG continue to sit passively back in this early game. That CS lead in the bottom lane you were talking about, Jamada, it's about 10-15 in the time being. You can see top side as well. That's the only lane really going well for LNG. Even mid being a bit of a difference, enabling RA to start up on some of these neutrals.
This is the thing, RA, they've got control of these lanes. They're going to have control of these neutrals for the first 15, maybe even almost 20 minutes until some items can come in for up for Zika. And right now you can see on this dragon, LNG kind of half-heartedly walking around, not sure if they really want to poke their heads through. I think the call eventually does come in that they should just move this one over. Don't try and contest here into this hook. You're just going to end up giving over your lives. And that will just be a very clean Ocean Dragon pickup. And, you know, before 6 minutes as well. So early soul, potentially, if Ari can keep the snowball going with the pressure they should maintain for a little while. Oh, God.
Scout getting low. I sometimes, man, those interactions. That was janky.
I hate that E interaction with Jayce, man.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
anytime you have a dash and you're dealing with Jayce and you get interrupted by it, it just feels so horrible. Scout's fortunate enough to walk out though, so
it's hard, man. Like there are so many interactions in the game right now. I feel like I'm saying that on, but yeah, mechanics not there. At the very least, rather. Scout, I believe, was able to TP back the lane. Now changes it to an ignite. So using that unsealed spellbook, while Strive was able to get the bully out and then TP back himself. So mid laners have hit that 6 point here, Jamada, so Scout can start moving around a little bit with Tarzan if he so desires, and maybe get himself a little bit more priority or presence in this lane.
yeah, definitely. Now that you've got that level 6, you know, the gank's potential from Leyan is definitely a lot lower, and like you say, if he gets that brief window to just shove in a wave, maybe Strive kind of gets a first move over to the bottom side perhaps, and the reaction is for Scout to go towards the top side with that level 6, pairing with Tarzan. A lot of sticking power, a lot of CC. Maybe they can try and set the top side ahead. Maybe look for a Herald at that. Right now, though, tying up potentially the end. No flash from that gank earlier.
Peekaboo. Great Arctic Assault, though. Leyan not level 6. They all in. Cube trying to play the distractor here as he gets locked up. Zeka does his damage, gets out of there as well. Zika, excuse me. So the 2v2 in top lane, nothing else happens, and Scout just continues to get bullied out here in the mid lane. So a great attempt here from Tarzan, who continues trying to be aggressive up in that enemy jungle. A bit of a flashed out of the bottom lane. Not sure what happened on our screen. Not sure if people saw that, but we're apparently into the matrix of how badly bottom lane is going.
Yeah, it's just like bump it into the replay. But it's not a replay, it's live. And it's just up getting bullied. Oh, that was really unfortunate for the side of Sssum to not stop the recall, but also he's going to crash the wave anyway. I'm not sure he's really too fussed about it. Said, LNG, I expect them to probably still pick up this first Herald, though the reset timings from RA do suggest if they really wanted to, they could look to contest this, but I don't think it's going to be the case. Leon is on his Raptors, not really looking to be fighting right now. So we'll see if there's maybe some kind of cross map towards the bottom side, but LNG will pick this objective up for free, and we'll see where exactly they want to put it, because, you know, options across the board are kind of try and get up back into the game, advance Scout into a gold threshold where he's getting that row up super early, or, you know, up on the top side. Zika has a massive 20 CS lead almost, so trying to push him further ahead might not be too terrible an idea either. So LNG options on that Herald, pretty wide standing, shall we say. On the bottom side, Leyan is trying to get some of the counter jungle back, but up's going to force it.
But again, this is what Leon's been doing all game. Smite finds it. The blue buff invade yet again. Part 2 works out as Tarzan goes for the ulti. Glacial Prison with a lockdown. Soulflare flashed away. There's no Merc trade there, but it's still enough. Bramble Smash pile on top. Hung going in. That's into 4 people, but maybe it sets up Scout, who gets his first kill of the game. As he flashes away, RA are on the chase. Hope not there, but the sapling still follows through the shock blast. Could nail his doom down. Needs a bit of help from LP to make sure it doesn't go further. And it ends up being a 1-for-1 trade despite Hung being too much of a chat. Yeah. Okay, hang on, pause on that. Zeka flashing away. All right, big man at the top lane was like, I'm going to ulti, but then immediately regret his decision.
Yeah, I think the thought process is there. I don't want to get ulted to Narnia away from the lane, so Just getting the flash out to deny Cube the angle, but yeah, Ultimate comes in, Soul Flare just a split second too late to get a chain CC going. Even if they do, I don't know if they'll really burst down Leyan there, but yeah, this engage from Hong was a little overzealous to say the least, but they do pick up Southwind for it. And the kill credit does go to Scout, so that's going to be gold to the good, getting him towards that first mythic, as okay, engage.
Jane's Corruption to follow up as well. Hung started this off, but LP just doesn't have the damage, it seems. Hung trying to finish the kill himself, but Southwind now out of range as Sssum cleans up the rest. And look, an attempt yet again, but the summoners at a cost for LNG's bottom lane is starting to hurt more and more here, Jamada, because now it's 30 CS down. You have to back away with another wave that'll be pushed in. Look how much more CS LP's about to lose.
Yeah, it's a lot of gold to be down in a Varus lane, and you know, a lane that which typically you'd expect to see, you know, at very least stay even in CS, AD carry to AD carry. So far, Aria just had the better of this 2v2 down on the bottom side. Scout will at least pick up this wave, so it's not going to go entirely to, I don't know, where does the gold go when it just dies?
Oh, hang on. Also be cancelled actually. Sssum might be in a bit of trouble. Scout might only be level 9, but still has enough AP to threaten.
And there's like a treasury of gold. Sorry to derail you.
No, you're right. There is.
I think I'm asking the important questions here. You know?
I think you need to understand that there's a lot more to this game. People don't think there's an offshore facility for Aphelios. People wonder how he gets his items. As Zika, not going to be able to stop that back TP that comes through. Now, I want to mention this is going to be a fight because Leyan has his ultimate available. Strive trying to poke him down. Southwind coming through as well. Surely you have the guts, but maybe with LP there and your Sivir only coming back to lane, you're just going to leave it for now, letting LNG equal out.
I've got to say, LNG kind of get away with murder securing that dragon, to be honest with you, because Sssum already has his Kraken Slayer, whereas LP is working with, I think it was a Vamp Scepter Longsword and tier 2 boots. So the stat difference is kind of crazy. So for LNG to walk away with the neutral and just stop a potential early soul coming out, that's definitely very huge for them. So credit to them for seeing the brief window on that reset timing from RA's bottom lane to ensure that they have enough time to secure the objective. I feel like you just try and 50-50 that, but didn't want to give over his life.
Maybe smart, you know, maybe it's smart. We've talked a lot about the early, and we've talked a lot about, I guess, RA setting up into this game, and they are pretty set up, right? We've already talked about the CS difference, the item difference you mentioned with Sssum there as well. LNG getting these small moments where, yeah, they are getting away with murder, right? So Herald was another one, using some of those timing windows pretty well. And that Herald that also is going to get Scout gold, question mark? No. Actually, only to Tarzan, and the plate wasn't 2, it was single. Now can they translate it into the bottom lane's a question. LP without a flash, but Chance Corruption there. Nature's Grasp flies through, that's just for Hung, with a little bit of spice for Tarzan as well. Leyan stopping the potential dive.
Just being there, just playing bodyguard, ensuring that, like you say, no dive comes through. Okay, that's an all-out from Q.
Just these things again, eh? How good is this champion? Well, Strive is going to come and interrupt the 1v1. We never get to know if Q could do this by himself, because Strive will add a kill to his repertoire. 2-0 start for Jayce, and it was nicely done for Cube to kick it off.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Ksante's pretty broken. I think he would have won the 1v1 anyway. But Strive gets the kill credit for himself, and he's going to feel quite happy about that one. Jayce as well. No slouch in this gaming department, and especially once you hit that Eclipse, I think a lot of people sleep on how much burst damage is available to Jayce, even before he hits the Mirror Mana. Just face-checking into him. If we see that happen on the side of perhaps LP, maybe even Scout for now. He does have his rower. I'd certainly be surprised at how quickly he will remove the health bar of enemy champions with just that first mythic pickup before the tier stacked.
Early, isn't it? Like that Rod of Ages, again, it's been there since 11, 12 minutes, and especially in a Jayce lane, Jamada. A lot of the times we've seen Jayce, you know, bully this lane. It's been a great response. We've seen a couple of mid Jayce so far in the LPL, but just generally in solo queue. Kassadin shouldn't be this comfortable. And when I say comfortable, I mean not dying, not down 30, 40 CS instead.
Yeah, I think the fact that Scout is where he, excuse me, is where he is at 14 minutes. Definitely credit to him for not getting bullied out. I feel like RA as a whole didn't really focus on trying to set him behind either, so it does definitely help, and you can always spec in rune-wise and things like that to just survive through the lane. And of course, Roa is so damn cheap, so I think it's 2.7k, if memory serves me right. It's in that realm. It's not crazy expensive.
But and you know, we did see Strive bully him out a little bit, like to give him credit, but yeah, again, they didn't capitalize. I like to hit on that point because in draft, we were talking about Scout being a really great condition in, how side lanes can be played. Zika there as well. Tarzan might be coming in. Strive might be the one getting bullied now with an Arctic Assault. Flash is going to be burned, but guess what? Permafrost with double melee champions. Press W as a Renekton and make it so. There's a shutdown. Crikey. 1-0 start for Zika as he gets side lane as well.
Yeah, exactly. And real nice from Tarzan just to get the double passive proc there to lock down Strive for longer, maximize the DPS, and ensure that Zika can get there in time to just add to the amount of CC thrown on top of the Jayce's head. Now this will be this tier 1 on the bottom side picked up, so a whole bunch of gold just injected into this Renekton. Almost 1,000 basically, you think about it. The kill, it was a shutdown plus the tower. He is doing mighty damn fine for himself. It was countered out by that Rift Herald on the top side, so we'll see whether or not RA can potentially capitalize on the back of maybe a positive skirmish off this next dragon spawn in around 50 seconds time. But for now, that's going to feel like a massive upswing in gold for LNG.
Especially if Scout gets his turret too, right? He has the TP available, next wave crushing in. Strive is the only one to match him, but the question of whether he'll be there in time might be answered shortly. Hung is hovering around just in case he's turned into a 2-3 man. So he'll back away now to get there in time. Jamada, 30 seconds with the dragon you mentioned, and first items have been picked up by LNG. LP now has his Immortal Shield Bow with the on-hit Varus coming up. Zika, we already talked about Tarzan there with the Radiant Virtue too. So they do have the ability to match this, as it seems like they are pretty interested in the contest.
Yeah, I mean, items even across the board. They're using the Herald RA, just try and levy some pressure in the mid lane. Maybe get the tower if they can rock the Demolish proc from Cube, but looks like LNG are just about going to be able to stave off the full-on attempt, and RA weren't really too interested in fully committing to the tower either. And now I think they should have first move to the river as well. Wave clear from Sssum is great, but look at this. Zika's on the flank, and he's almost entirely unknown to RA right now. They've got that sapling, which is going to play information blocker.
But here he comes. I mean, this is like being at Taronga Zoo. The crocodiles, they lurk around you and then they snap. Even though you're behind a fence, you're still safe. But for LNG, they're deciding to break it down and get through to the other side. Zika getting low, but he's taking so much damage as Cube tries to abuse Season 13, and he might have done so unless Scout is able to follow through, which we all know the answer is yes to. LP following it up, and that is destruction incarnate with a 3-for-1 in LNG's favor.
Don't feed the crocodiles. RA did not read the signs there, and they couldn't quite deal with that flank from Zika. Even though he's the only one that drops from LNG, he's one that deals the most damage to this team fight for RA's perspective. And now LNG, they'll pick up that dragon really nicely fought out, because RA had a lot of decent setup walking into the river. Having that first move there, that would have been a very difficult fight to try and take head on. But the solar flare is great. It locks down Sssum. He has to cleanse, flash away. He's in a position where he can't really put out the damage he wants to, and then just look at Zika getting all of this AoE damage out. Empowered Cold Meek, Gore Drinker in the middle of so many, whilst LP is basically free to just auto attack everyone else on RA at his leisure.
I hate the start they did. Like on the other side, it's like, man, Zika's positioning great, and Cube just rattling away, miniature Aurelia.
Dude, it's so silly.
Again, doesn't make much damage.
It is so silly. I mean, not to like, the cast the cliche, I'm talking about my solo queue games here. Like, I remember learning Ksante just, because I knew he was going to be a prevalent champion for Season 13. And anytime I did something silly, I just thought to myself, man, this champion is so damn broken. How is it going to get to life like this? Yeah. And it just basically didn't get any nerfs until, I think, like the hotfix 13.1b, really? I think the 13.1 patch wasn't really that heavy.
But as well, like you're speaking of that, Aurelian Soul, I've just seen 3 days till it gets released. I don't know if you've seen it, everyone knows, the Vandal channel, shout out. And the Aurelian Soul on neutrals, like it's just ridiculous, the new ultimate. I think it was like a 3-second Baron. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that gets fixed as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because it does sounds very nice. As Scout can't be chased here. We talked about it a little bit before. Hard to chase up a Kassadin. Is right now nothing up and available for a minute. That's when Baron comes through, but they're looking for Tarzan. Leyan stealing away the big Krug. Bit of a shame. But what else can they find? Tarzan going to be the target of Scout now. Wonders if he should go Bramble Smash. And the Nature's Grasp the flash away. And just like that, now LNG looking for the turn. They've used everything to try and kill this big Peppa Pig. But unfortunately, Peppa Pig can't be stopped.
Yeah, big ball. Tarzan is on, unable to be taken down. And LNG, honestly, a little bit unfortunate this skirmish doesn't happen 30 seconds later for them, because it's a potential Baron angle. You take down Leon, you take down Sssum, arguably the most, no, unarguably the most fed member of RA right now. Definitely a good window. They can't find Strive on the back end, trying to reset. RA just kind of overstep, poking and prodding, maybe just looking for that top tier 1, not really having too much else to play for. It's like on the bottom side, it's Q taking that tier 1 on the bottom side of the map, so trades out a little bit for himself in the side lane, but still pretty much a full item down. Zika has himself a Black Cleaver already.
So, Jamada, let me ask you a little bit about scaling here, because I think it's an important question before we get to these next objective fights, right? We know Kassadin scales out of the world, but we also see a Sivir, an enchanter by his side. There's a decent front line as well, where you look at the side of LNG, like their front line in the Leona is going to take a little bit to get going. We know Renekton is more of a bruiser, right? The Sejuani too, the ability here to kind of be damaged down by people like Leyan, who does have the demonic praise. Walk me through your thoughts about how this game kind of progresses, and if there's a scaling advantage you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's kind of tricky. I think if you straight up play front to back, then I feel like you definitely favor RA, but if you start to factor in all of the other things that are variable to League of Legends teamfights, flank angles, I think if Scout ever gets clean backline access to Sssum, Southwind, even Strive to a degree, as almost actually not going to get blocked for Hong. That's kind of unlucky. High ground, low ground there, playing its very fun part. But yeah, I think if Scout gets that back line access, then yeah, I feel like RA really struggle to deal with him. I think there's just not really enough consistent lockdown. Sure, you've always got Twisted Advance, but I feel like Scout's not really going to care. He's also opting in, I would imagine, to a Zhonya's third item as well, as he's got that stopwatch in inventory. I think stopwatch from runes, but then he's probably just going to spec into it third, just because he can. It's a cheaper option in the immediate, and I think, honestly, looking for a flank, trying to blow someone up, and then just buying those 2.5 extra seconds of time is going to allow the rest of LNG to reposition and just try and play around those flanks. And speaking of flanks, you can't really forget about Zika either. He's already had one very strong flank on the previous Dragon fight. So I think that's the angle that LNG really want to look towards. If they can play more in a kind of a pincer manner, right? Allow Scout and Zika to have backline access, then I think teamfights are fine. If Ari can try and keep it uniform and front to back, then I think the scaling kind of leans a little more towards them. But it is really going to be about how both these teams can manage each other and try and get the most optimal teamfight out of their team compositions.
All right, I like that though. Instant movement for an LNG, front to back here from RA. Flash is already burned. Leyan, all for the blue buff, decided that his flash should be on cooldown for today. Well, I don't, because Dragon's coming up.
Look, you have to let the moments happen, you know? And sometimes you see something you don't agree with, and you've just got to take it on the chin. Right, you know what?
I can work with that as well, dude. Look, but the problem is, now no flash available.
Oh.
You've got Smite at the very least, and as Midway clears out, Scout's just not here. Moving into Dragon, there's the Nature Grass once again. Tarzan being zoned off, now the burst down. Not stolen, but RA now the escape needs to come through. Their second Dragon's at worst. The Cosmos Hung is in the back line by himself. Leyan first to die. Hung almost thriving here. And speaking of RA, utilizing their Ksante and Cube to try and find another angle. LNG have come out of this with a kill, but it was for the Dragon. Now does it go into something else?
I think they might be angling for the Baron here. The problem there for LNG was that Scout wasn't quite level 16, and I actually called out. I thought that one kill would actually give him that level 16. Now that he's gone through the mid wave, he's got it. And now RA with no jungler, they've got to face check into this, and this is going to be very scary, because you can already see Scout is just waiting for a commitment from RA. He knows as soon as they walk forward, can just walk over the wall, and
Jamada,
if he has to reposition.
Scary man, Zika doing the same. The sandwich press you talked about. I love a good toasty, but this one's melting out the side. First down with Strive, next down with the sickness that is Southwind, and third Cube without an ultimate. RA walked into the trap, but there was no fishhead man from Star Wars to warn them about it, and therefore LNG walk away as 5, a damaged 5, but still 5 strong.
Yep, RA, they tried to assault the Death Star, and unfortunately, they don't have enough starships to really walk into this one comfortably. Scout, again, just so easy to attack the backline there. Just has to wait for RA to commit far enough, and honestly, it's the rest of LNG that end up cleaning up house on the top side of the fight, while Scout eventually advances forward on the bottom side. Teleport in, full resource bar, even both the solo laners dead. That should be LNG picking up this Baron. Now they lead the game over 5,000 gold, just about 5,000. And I'm sure they will try and strip away whatever towers remain outside of the base. But you can see here, Strive just steps too far forward, looking for poke, simple as that. Gets dropped by the rest of LNG. And on the bottom side of the fight here, Scout, again, if he gets clean backline access like this, he's going to block Southwind. He's going to block Sssum. In this case, he was able to just buy enough time for the rest of LNG to show up to kill Cube. And now with Baron on toe, HYsterics, I feel like they're going to take all of these inner towers at the very least.
Oh yeah, man. You talk about side lane access early in the game. And now we're going to see it come into reality with Scout, who's just been blowing people up. You mentioned it before, but Zhonya's Hourglass now picked up the versatility to do things like this. Yeah, whatever, I'm in, I'm out. LNG, there's one outer turret for the making. Inner's now exposed in every single lane. Wave pushing up, you can see in the bottom side. Looks like we got a slow push building up in the top side as well. And LNG right now, playing between space, trying to draw RA in. What is an obvious scrap in these side lanes?
Definitely. RA just needs to turtle the best they can. Right now, the wave's working for them quite well. I think it's going to be about how they respond to this mid wave as it comes in now, and whether or not LNG can try and deny access. Specifically Sssum, but he's going to be able to walk through. So defense going well right now for RA. LNG really need to try and catch one of these RA members on the rotation. Maybe they can send full numbers down to Cube. I feel like it just takes too long to dive. They will eventually pick up this tier 2 though. RA stretched a little bit too thin. And LNG just playing the numbers well enough to secure that out inner bottom side of the map. Let's see if they can get this mid lane tier 2 as well. Still got a little bit over 60 minutes, 60 seconds.
Okay,
left,
yeah, 60 minutes. Kassadin hits level 26. Yeah, I get you. But
yeah, it's
Scout's the one that sent that up, right? And as mid pushes in, now starts working in on the top side. Remember, bit of a slow push that built up there, and LB moves back over to mid. Zika's still here, so spreading them thin was a nice touch. RA are now just trying to continue this turtle when they're down almost 8,000 gold at 26 minutes in the game. And remember, this Baron has 45 seconds to go. That'll lead directly to the next dragon, with LNG probably having given more of an advantage. And as I'm talking now, chance of corruption come through. That's just the threat. That might be enough to still open up yet another inner turret.
Threat of that engage just sends RA far enough back that that's how it can come through. So she's looking for this, but Sssum's in the wings.
Gonna buy time, but Zika, your team's not nearby. Southwind here, but missing the Q. Now, you know what? When I said no time, forget me. Q might survive for now, but look, the rest of the team is flying through, and Scout is the pupper with the mask. Who says no? TP's gonna come in instead, and LNG just back away off the back of that. So the Baron Assault stops. They still get inner turret through the mid lane, but Zika maybe a bit too harpy.
Zika, even though he individually oversteps, the rest of LNG, again, like really good discipline. As soon as they see that teleport come down, even though they know they could probably win that fight, taking the coin flip chance of a 5v4 right before this dragon spawns, what's the point when you know you can probably just back away and secure the dragon anyway? So even though they're seeing a couple of individual oversteps from LNG, as a unit, they're still making the correct choices to ensure they're securing some of these objectives. So RA, a bit of a moment to breathe. They do lose all of their inner towers, but I think considering where LNG are in terms of the game state right now, with having such a powerful Kassadin, with Zika being so powerful on the side lane as well, so strong and hard to deal with, you need 2-3 members really to cut through the health bar in a reasonable amount of time. I think you can call that a fairly successful Baron defense, just on the grounds of not having their base cracked open.
Well, then it will go to the next fight. It'll go to the Dragon Soul that comes through in about 4 minutes 50. You'll go to the next Baron in 2 minutes as well. By that time, we'll have a Void Staff here on Scout. A probably third item for Tarzan, who was already impenetrable as that boar. You look on the other side. We've got 3 items Sivir. Okay, Sssum is definitely a condition here, Jamada. I feel like we've been talking about him being ahead of the curve the whole game as he still holds the CS mark. But dude, it's already been so hard to watch him survive against people like Scout, against Zika, Tarzan too. I still don't know how he's going to survive and do the DPS that's required.
Maybe the Scout oversteps a little bit, but I mean, he's so strong, so mobile.
Strive has gone all into this. I mean, Scout and Hung both went fully in. You know what? Forget the question, because the Scout goes in, the rest of the team like, nope, forget it. And that's how LNG throw the game.
I guess so. LNG just, you know, the whole disciplinary, yeah, forget that for a second. They just feel like maybe RA deserve a bit more of a chance. And Sssum really easily set up. No one really able to touch him, and Cube doing a nice job of just ensuring he can lock down Scout. Keep your eyes on that, honestly, for the rest of the game. Cube can definitely, to a point, keep Scout kind of under control with the all-out, just trying to CC him really far away, perhaps, if he can get the angle onto a wall. But right now, talking about the repercussions of that team fight, Ari now have control of this topside jungle. I think they do have quite a few wards still. Southwind's just reset, so he's coming out to try and set some of that up. Let's get a replay look of what actually went down here, because Scout, I think he actually rip-walks into a sapling, which is why he takes so much damage. Hong just goes too far, too quickly, and the rest of LNG aren't able to actually respond at all. See as well, LP was actually held up on the top side of the fight, wasn't able to advance forward over the rest of LNG to provide some DPS, and Scout kind of a victim of Hong's over-aggressiveness, trying to see if he can find anything off the back of it. Now all of a sudden, RA have a fair amount of control on this top side of the map, and LNG kind of have to check into a fair amount of vision. We'll see how scared they are, but again, Sssum is very, very powerful. Has a deep teleport ward available for the Renekton if he wants it, and he's going to use it, so let's see how this one goes.
But remember, that's going to be an award as well, so they know. Scout goes in, Southwind now to the left. You can see tunneling through this choke, but for LNG, that's right where they want them. Scout has to flash back over the wall as things not going as clean as you thought. Hung goes in the back line as Cube is doing Ksante things. Flip them! Those burgers don't cook themselves. Cube will die in the end, but Scout looks like he's been to McDonald's before. LNG will find the fight. 4 people dead. It was messy, but I think they'll take it.
Yeah, I think they will, and unfortunately, it's RA that are getting cooked in the choke yet again, just getting flanked on multiple angles. Zika on one side, Scout able to dip and weave over the wall. And this should just be game. Death timer's a little bit too long here. RA get caught out. They had position. They got that 1 pick or the 2 picks in that team fight just before. Thought maybe they'd have a little bit more control, but LNG are just too damn strong. Scout, too many items. And LNG,
well,
they'll win out on that pizza.
There's 4 people on a turret. First one's going to drop. Next turret number 2 will follow through. Southwind running. Flash going to be burnt, but they move him away from the Nexus. The Scout just takes his free food. Onto Leyan next, who tries to save it. Nexus needs to be the priority, but no, the damage still good enough. And as it goes down, LNG with the game 1 win. It wasn't stunning, but it was enough to make us say good job.
Hey, I mean, at the end of the day, they saw the victory screens, so it may not have been the cleanest game in the world, but they still take down RA in dominant enough fashion, I feel. What we would kind of expect from this LNG lineup, and I think a fair amount to leave that game with in terms of information and how they should probably look to try and play their game number 2 here into RA, because definitely a couple of very easy to clean up mistakes going on, and I think a lot of it based on individual over-aggression, which is what we didn't quite see in their RNG series. Yeah. So I think they clean that up, and the game overall just looks a lot cleaner for them.
Yeah, look, honestly, you know, what we saw was like that, I guess a better read this time around, and they're not willing to sit on their elbows. I don't think that's a phrase, but definitely from a TV show. But for RA on the other side, the individual lane identity that we got through in that game was great, but it didn't extend Jamada. It didn't extend through, you know, the 3rd, 4th dragon. Bit of a shame considering that RA have shown real great signs of, I guess, individual strength. I'm talking about people like Leyan, Cube. In that game, even on Ksante, I think Cube was fantastic. Cube was definitely a driving force. But unfortunately, what we saw was not the clean fights coming through. As you can see, the fact that he did almost more damage than a Jayce, that tells you something, surely.
Maybe just a little bit. I don't want to make grand assumptions here, HYsterics. But yeah, I think for RA, a lot to walk away and think on in that game number 1, and I think realistically a lot of it comes from, like you just said, right, a lot of that early lane dominance, trying to actually transfer that into a consistent snowball. And I think a lot of it goes back to that 2nd dragon. I think the fact that they gave up that 2nd dragon and then they kind of lost that early potential of a snowball to a soul, and I think that's the kind of timer you need to try and put on LNG so that they're pressured to be ready for a fight at 3rd or 4th dragon. I think the fact that they lost that by giving up that 2nd dragon really made them lose a fair amount of pressure, because the Herald that they did get on the 2nd spawn up around, it felt like they didn't really get much out of it either. So I think if they're going to make cross maps like that, or, you know, decisions to give up these neutrals, it has to come with good reason to the rest of the game as it unfolds, because I think giving that much freedom to LNG was honestly a mistake they couldn't afford to make.
Yeah, getting away with, like, yeah, I guess dotting the I's, crossing the T's is what it comes down to as well. Scout gets MVP, by the way, if you're wondering, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with LNG getting these small windows that they were easily able to turn into a very successful kassadin, a very successful Sejuani. You know, I feel like Tarzan did a lot of heavy lifting here as well, but A shout out to Scout, who decided to play a champion that at level 16 doesn't really fall anywhere, except on the enemy's faces. So good job, I guess. Jamada, another kassadin game. But yeah, I think Scout was pretty clean. Even within the lane, there wasn't as much given away as maybe there would be from another player.
Yeah, definitely. I think the fact that he was able to come out of the laning phase with so little a deficit, really, I wouldn't even call that a deficit. It's one of those things where, like, sure, flat numbers, technically a deficit. Game state, is it really a deficit if you match mythic timing with an enemy lane bully in Jayce as kassadin?
True.
No, not really. So, yeah, Scout just piloting that one to nothing short of clinical success, and he was a major reason as to why RA had to be so scared in so many of those team fights.
Again, RA, you know, showing glimpses within the lanes. But yeah, the team fights came through and it was LNG all the time. As ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going into game 2 right after this short break to catch you back up to speed here for our second match of tonight.